Okay, so let's talk about textbooks. In my face-to-face classes, I used to say that students don't need the book, but they need a book. Students should have a textbook, but I wouldn't tie students to a specific textbook. I find that they are just much too similar to each other, they're much too expensive. Right now, I don't know, we're up to edition 8 of the James Stewart book. Well, I bet that the 7th edition or a 6th edition can be freely downloaded as a PDF file from the internet. And it's just as good as the 8th edition one. Now, just to make matters complicated in more ways than one, there are two types of books with respect to how they approach calculus. Well, first there was just one approach, and that didn't have a name. And now that we have two different approaches, we call it the traditional approach. The new approach is called early transcendentals. Our class is following an early transcendentals course outline, so you're better off with an early transcendentals book. Usually you can see a capital E or ET for early transcendentals, so look for that. Really quickly, the difference is that the traditional approach was rigorously following the logic of the subject. But that did not lend itself well to teaching. It was kind of difficult pedagogically because there were certain things that were introduced too late within the course. So the early transcendentals, as its name shows, sometimes introduces something a little too early. So we're trampling on the logic a little bit, but it was just pedagogically a better choice because students had a better learning experience with it. In all my teaching career, I have gone with early transcendental approach. So that's one thing. You can probably benefit a great deal from a traditional approach book as well. Now, some people don't need a book at all, but I just want to warn you that from the three things that are videos, my own written handouts, and the textbook, none of them will cover everything. So there will be things where the textbook is deficient. There will be things that I couldn't find or make a video, and there will be things when my written handout does not cover the entire material, and often it does not show steps, just the answers. You will see that there are worksheets that without detailed solutions, just with final answers. How should you study? How much should you study? And what resources to use? Let the problems guide you. If you can solve the problems quickly and correctly, you're doing things right. Whatever you're doing, keep doing that. If that's not the case, you need to review and revise your studying strategies. Okay. I wish we were done with discussing the book, but there is another thing about books. Calculus is a fairly modern subject within mathematics. The questions of calculus go back thousands of years. The Greeks were having pretty good results of something that is now part of calculus. So it's not a modern subject in the sense that it came out of the blue. Pieces of calculus were all around. But there were two people, interestingly, following very different techniques who came up with the same unifying theory that were the foundations of what we call today calculus. They both discovered what we call now the fundamental theorem of calculus that unified apparently unrelated topics into a single subject. It's quite interesting that these people came to this result just about the same time using very different methods. The two fathers of calculus are Isaac Newton and Leibniz. Gottfried Leibniz, I think that's his first name. And not only their techniques were different, but their notation as well. So today in calculus, we have two standard notations. One of them is called the Newton notation. The other one is the Leibniz notation. And none of them is better than the other, and none of them can be thrown away. They both have their own thing going, and both of them can be very clumsy at places where the other one is really good. So basically, both Leibniz and Newton notations are all over the place. I personally used to be very much in favor of Newton's notation, and you will see that from me too. The minute you will appreciate Leibniz notation is when you take Calculus 2. Calculus 2 is very heavily favoring Leibniz's notation. What I wanted to say at this point is that what you're going to see from me is heavily favoring the Newton notation, so you might be better off with a book that does the same thing. That said, so that's about the textbook. If I had one wish, is that you do not spend a penny on textbook. There are plenty of free resources out there. For example, I'm showing you how to download a free calculus textbook from OpenStax. And what you're seeing here is a list of authors of calculus books that I think are excellent books. Actually, my other advice is don't get one book, get 2 or 3, especially if they're free on the internet. Okay, so that's what I wanted to say about the books.